Yeah, thanks, Tice. Well, follow Vicky and John, especially the personal contributions they made. I don't think I'll be anywhere near as passionate as either one of them, but I'll give you a bit of a brief last sort of 15-20 years regarding the FBU and New Labour originally, and then Labour, or Old Labour, or New Old Labour. That's what I want to call it. I'm not quite sure that'll fit on a t-shirt, but I think that's where we're going. So in 2002 we took a national dispute against New Labour over a legitimate pay claim. Our last national strike were in 77 against medium Labour, or the last Labour. So we were getting into a battle with New Labour over pay because as pay had been stifled for 25 years. And we didn't win that campaign. It's fair to say that we got well and truly beaten. National standards went, so if you lived in the middle of Leeds, you could have expected a fire engine in 5 minutes 41. That was a national standard. And if you lived at Otley, you could receive a fire engine in 5 minutes 41. That national standard was obliterated. So now, if you live in the middle of Leeds, you might get one in 7 minutes. If you live one in Otley, it might be 11 minutes. And that's what happened. That was the outcome of that pay dispute with Labour, apart from us not winning a decent pay rise. The 2010 came, and we all knew what were coming. The public sector were going to get absolutely smashed uphill and down dale, and that's exactly what happened. Despite Cameron standing on the forecourt of a fire station in Carlisle, just after they'd had some floods, and saying that don't worry about it, there will be no cuts to the frontline services. Yeah, well that's great, because what happened between 2010 and now is that we've seen around about 11,000 full-time firefighter job losses, which perhaps don't seem a great deal on the face of it, but when you think in 2009 we had something around 55,000, it was 1 in 5 national jobs gone. In West Yorkshire we were particularly hit hard. We actually lost 1 in 3. We'd gone from 1,600 to just over 1,000 in just over 8 years. And it's difficult to recover from that. It is really difficult to cover. And what's the impact on us? Well, obviously the first thing is there's fewer firefighters. It's a longer time for us to get to you in your emergency, whether you're stuck upside down in a car, or whether you're hanging out your bedroom window, or whether you're being swept down a fast-flowing river. It's going to take longer. So that was one thing. The second thing is that with the additional stresses on the firefighters, we had the mental illness that came with it, and MEND, who did a blue light survey, found that 4 in 10 firefighters were suffering or had suffered from mental ill health because of the demands of the job. So, and again, I'm sure these experts probably in the room actually that can tell you a lot more about mental ill health and what's happened since 2010 with the Tories. Going back to the fire service, and particularly in 2013, the government then decided to scrap or change the public sector pensions and introduce the public sector pension bill for 2015. The FBU were the only union to fight that on the grounds of discrimination. The judges took a similar case, but we were the only union to fight that. And we won. We beat the Tory government. Ironically, they were saying that it was unaffordable to the taxpayer, yet they were using taxpayers' money to beat the FBU on a tax issue, if you like. So we were paying for it twice. In fact, we were paying for it because we were getting stiffed in the pension, and we were also getting paying for it because we were paying the government's legal team to try and beat us. It was just bizarre. But we won, and that's had a massive impact on all public sector workers. We've got the remedy case coming up in 2 weeks' time. I think it's 16th of December, rings a bell. And we'll find out what that means for us first, and then for the public sector generally. Liz Truss, in June time, spoke in Parliament and said that the FBU's victory will cost the government around £4 billion to try and put it right. So these Tories can't be beat. They make no bones about it. If there is a will, there is a way, and we will do that. I just wanted to briefly touch on Grenfell, because it's still quite raw, and it still gets me today. You know, the richest borough in the richest city, in the 5th richest country, and we've lost 72 people in a fire like that. That should never have happened. I've just received an email today from a principal officer in West Yorkshire about what West Yorkshire are doing about the dangerous cladding in buildings in West Yorkshire. Bearing in mind it's over 2 years now since Grenfell. They are now, only now, writing to the owners of those buildings. There's 15 in total. There's 13 residential high-rise. There's a hospital and there's a hotel. They're only now writing to them, telling them to remove the cladding immediately. And they're also going to be writing to the residents about safety advice. I don't know what safety advice you could even offer those people in Grenfell when this flammable stuff is splattered all around you. So it'd be interesting to see what that safety advice would be. The inquiry was, in our view, done wrong. We should have actually looked into first how the cladding was on that building. Ironically, the colour of the cladding was called champagne. Again, it was about perception, because it looked scruffy. So we'll clad it in this champagne. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. I just wanted to, because there's a couple of things that's happened that's probably gone unreported, actually, or very little, actually. I know I've touched on it before when I've spoken about Larkinall House. Well, Larkinall House happened more than 20 years ago now, I think, 96, I think it was. And that started, which I think there were six people lost their lives, and that started by a faulty TV, and again fire spread from outside entering flats above. Grenfell were obviously a faulty fridge. So there's some real issues going off regarding fire safety in the home that we need to address. The second one I wanted to talk about was a place called Beechmere. Beechmere is a residential block in Crewe that looked after 150 elderly people lived there. Purpose built, £20 million, but it was a timber structure. And this took place in July, I think, this year. Fire started at 4:30 in the early evening. State put policy were in place, but they decided pretty early to evacuate. It still took 15 minutes to get all these people out of this building. The chief fire officer for Crewe said that we saw a 20 million building reduced to dust in less than 14 hours. He also believes that should it have happened a few hours later, there would have been a significant body count. The second one that's pretty much gone unreported, although you may have seen there's some YouTube footage of it. Samuel Garside Flats, and what happened there was they had wooden balconies on the outside of the flats, and again, external fire spread is a real issue. But these were warned, as were Grenfell. They had plenty of warnings from the Residents' Association. They were warned 5 months earlier, saying that they believed that the timber cladding and the timber balconies weren't fire resistant. And sure enough, a fire happened at 3:30, And again, an expert said that should the fire had started 12 hours later, there would have been a death toll to rival Grenfell. It is, honestly, only through the grace of God that we are not seeing a Grenfell-type incident every single week. And that's down to successive governments, I've got to say, about ripping up legislation and calling it red tape, and 2 in, 1 out, and all the rest of that sort of stuff. But particularly so in the last 10 years where we've cut fire prevention. That's that, but I wanted to talk about manifestos and what it says in the Tory manifesto about fire service. And I was lucky to be at an event in Horsforth with Jane had the other weekend, and there were a couple of Tories there filming it. And I said, "Oh, you're a Tory?" "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." Yeah. I said, "What's Boris got in his manifesto for fire service?" "Well," he says, "don't worry about it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised." He says, "I bet I'm not." And thankfully, they did film it, and I did find it, so I will keep it for posterity. But and I'm not, unfortunately, pleasantly surprised. But what it does say in the Labour manifesto, the first thing, obviously, is a public sector pay will increase by 5% in 2020 and will be at inflation or above inflation to catch up on the deficit since 2010, which is very, very welcomed. Fire service, we've got a 17% real terms cut since 2010 in pay. We're around about £4,500 off if we'd stuck with inflation. The second thing, again, which I'm not quite sure how it's going to work for us, is a commitment for a 32-hour working week. Well, currently, firefighters work a 42-hour week, and obviously it's days and nights and weekends, so I'm not quite sure how that will work. So I'll be interested to see how that would work. Jeremy has offered that they will recruit 5,000 new firefighters, again, which is really welcomed. It's half the losses, but it's a step in the right direction. And he has committed to separating the governance, because currently in some brigades we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner running the fire service. In Manchester we've got the Mayor running the fire service. It's just absolutely bonkers. And then finally, going back to Grenfell, Labour has offered £1 billion for sprinklers and cladding replacement, where the Tories offer support for residents. So there's your options, folks. So yeah, vote Labour and vote for Jane Aitchison on 12th of December.